Hey there Sega fans, it's Dan, the Mega Driver of the Sega Guys here, with some impressions on a brand new game that, while not from Sega themselves, is from a company that is, shall we say, Sega adjacent. You see, we love Genki. As we've said in the past, their work on Virtua Fighter 3 TB on the Dreamcast, given the short development window, demands respect. But it wasn't just that iconic Dreamcast title, it's the racers they furnished both the Sega Saturn and Dreamcast with, and yes, that includes the Saturn exclusive entry for Sega's iconic Hang On franchise. Genki's jaunts across Tokyo's highways started on the Saturn in 1995 with Wangan Dead Heat, known as Highway 2000 in the US, and then followed up by Shutoku Battle 97. Yeah, the Shutoku Battle series started on the Super Famicom, but we don't care about that. Because the series really hit its stride when it moved to 3D, and especially when it came to Dreamcast with the gorgeous title known as Tokyo Highway Challenge in PAL territories, Shutoku Battle in Japan, and of course Tokyo Xtreme Racer in the US. With its slick visuals and engrossing arcade-style gameplay, it was a hit for Genki. A sequel would follow on the Sega Dreamcast, and while eventually it would come to the PlayStation 2 post the Dreamcast cancellation in 2001, for many fans, this series is synonymous with Sega's console. Finally, 25 years after the last game came to Dreamcast, Genki have released a new entry to the series. Does it provide the same thrills that appealed to Sega fans back in the day? Let's take a look. Tokyo Xtreme Racer is the new title from Genki, adopting the US name for the series and has released on Steam. Yes, it is currently a Steam-only game, and it has launched in early access. We grabbed a copy at the Sega Guys as soon as the game went on sale, in order to see if it lived up to its iconic origins. We'll jump straight into what Tokyo Xtreme Racer is all about. This is a series built upon the street racing scene on the highways of Japan's capital. The difference here is that this isn't just a simple point-to-point racer or a circuit racer. Here, you defeat rivals by depleting their battle points, or BP. This is done by pulling far enough ahead of them for enough time, but also by forcing an error. You see, there's no damage in this game, but hitting the track's obstacles or other vehicles will deplete your BP. Once a car's BP reaches zero, they lose, and it's your goal to win as many races as possible. When racing, the game is really very much in line with those previous classic Dreamcast and Sega Saturn games. Handling feels almost exactly like the Dreamcast game from my experience, save for some minor issues with controllers that I used, which we'll touch on in a little bit. Playing the Dreamcast game and then this back to back, it's amazing how close the gameplay model felt. This game is just as much fun, engrossing and thrilling as those original Sega Dreamcast games, and the overall structure of the main game is very similar as well, right from the start. You see, booting the game up, it does channel that late 90s, early 2000s vibe from the series' heyday. The menus, the music and the modes available all hit with a dose of nostalgia. Now, I'm going to pick up on a couple of points here. Because the game is in early access, you can expect a few issues, and two of the biggest ones for me were seen in these menus. Firstly, when using a controller especially, the cursor-based approach to these menus makes navigating them a chore at times. Sometimes the controller-orientated menus do appear, but having to drag a cursor across the screen in those other menus just doesn't feel intuitive. That said, I'm sure this will be fixed down the line. Secondly, some sensitivity options would be welcome when it comes to controller options, or if I've missed them, made more visible and accessible. The controller that I was using wouldn't give me full throttle on the game, despite that controller being fine for other racing games, and swapping it out for another pad gave me some more twitchy steering, which I think could have been solved with some calibration settings. To be honest, these are really minor nitpicks and would be solved by simply using a better pad, but it certainly is something that is accounted for in other races that I play on PC with these controllers. With that out of the way though, the setup of the game will be very familiar to veterans of the series. The main single player mode sees you purchase a car with your meagre funds, and from there you jump onto the on-ramp on Tokyo's highway and, away you go. You initiate races in this game by flashing your headlights at the other cars. You can do this against virtually any other vehicle on the road, and you can challenge no-name opponents as much as you like. The real challenge though comes from battling your rivals. These are identified on the map via arrows and provide increasingly sterner tests that the usual drivers on the road do not. They all come with their own emblems and names too. Hunt down these rivals, challenge them to races, and then defeat them. And then you'll earn CP, which is the game's currency, and progress through the story. The story itself involves beating your rivals' leaders and progressing through the street racing food chain, so to speak. And that story is told in a way that's quite beautifully close to the original games, with these scenes featuring written text, which is produced in very much the same vein as the original games. You do get these short animated cutscenes after you defeat these leaders or other significant story points. They're not intrusive and they're presented in a way that, as I said, is very much in keeping with the Dreamcast era. Of course, the story is one thing, the other is of course your whips. Like any career-based racing game, you'll want to drive better and better cars. Earning CP can be something of a grind in this game at the moment, and the early caps on CP can also be restrictive. However, it all feels really worthwhile. You can enhance your car with all manner of upgrades as you earn more cash, and fine-tune your chariot to your heart's content. In addition to CP, you'll also earn points to spend on skills and perks. These are a necessity and range from providing you with more health or BP to expanding that CP cap. Then there's the cosmetic side of things. You can spend your CP on decking out your ride with a new body kit to make it look awesome, or for some performance games. For free though, you can fully customise your car with all manner of paint jobs and decals. There's tons of variety in here, and I spent a good chunk of time in the editor mode alone. Once you're done in the garage, you head back out onto the highway to battle more challenges. You can't do this forever though. Racing will wear down your tyres and impact your ability to perform in a race, and when they reach a certain point, you'll have to return to the garage, bank your CP, make whatever tweaks to the car you need, and then head on back out with your newly refreshed car. As you battle around Tokyo's highway, the map continues to open up and you'll be treated to updated routes, as well as new on and off ramps to allow you to jump onto the highway in more places, strategically putting yourself near those race targets. In this way, Tokyo Xtreme Racer functions almost like an open world game, but the design of the highway keeps it somewhat linear and focused. And yet, this is pretty much exactly like the Dreamcast games. The gameplay loop here is perfect, and I was lost in Tokyo Xtreme Racer for hours when the game was first released. It's all helped by sublime visual and audio design. The game looks how our mind's eye saw the Dreamcast games in the 2000s. They're simply oozing with style, the nighttime lighting giving the game a really striking look as the reflections bounce around the screen. As far as I'm aware, these aren't ray traced, but they do look absolutely lovely. Visuals overall look realistic enough, but not overly so, because it's an incredibly stylized game, as the series always has been, and that classic look is retained despite giving us some lovely modern visuals. That said, I did notice some performance dips on my machine. I saw a few dips below 60 frames per second on my PC, despite me targeting 120 frames per second. The game is very GPU intensive, and my humble 4060 seemed to not always hit the mark at 1440p. Personally, as great as the visuals are, I don't think they should be overly taxing for the hardware. The Forza Horizon games, for example, run very well on my rig, so I'm hoping that this is another little optimization that can be made as the game moves through early access. But don't let any of that take away from what is an absolutely gorgeous and very evocative looking game. And the sound also hits in exactly the same way, with tunes that feel like they've come straight out of the turn of the millennium. It's honestly astonishing how well this game captures that time period in all aspects, and the music is a big part of that. Which kind of sums this game up perfectly. It represents something of a lost art, when gameplay was tighter and more focused, when arcade races weren't just viable, they were quite often headline releases. Amongst all the sim and open world races today, Xtreme Racer is an absolute breath of fresh air. The gameplay loop is simple but fiendishly addictive. The presentation is focused and evocative, feeling like a time capsule of sorts. This is the type of arcade game racing fans have been crying out for, that in recent years has only been satisfied by racers from indie developers. Genki have truly delivered a game worthy of this iconic franchise for the modern day. It's an absolute triumph already. The gameplay is sublime, the early access issues are comparatively minuscule, and the presentation is nigh on perfect. And it isn't just us who have loved the series' return. Big player counts and an overwhelmingly positive reception on Steam suggest waves of players are loving Tokyo Xtreme Racer as well. Hopefully this is just the start of something really special, and we can only dream of Sega taking the look at the success of this arcade racer's rebirth and following suit with one of their own iconic franchises. If you've played this excellent new release, let us know in the comments below. For me, Tokyo Xtreme Racer is already highly recommended to fans of the Dreamcast originals and of arcade racers in general. So get out there, hopefully I'll see you on Shitoku Highway, and of course I will see you on the Sega side.